It is one of the most painful lessons in American military history. A stark, undeniable moment when technological arrogance met battlefield reality. The year was 1898, and the United States, flexing its emerging global power, entered the Spanish-American War. They believed they were armed with a superior, modern weapon, the Krag-Jørgensen rifle. The enemy, Spanish forces, carried the German-designed Mauser Model 93. The results were immediate, terrifying, and utterly decisive. At pivotal engagements, from the intense skirmishes around Santiago de Cuba to the legendary but bloody assault on San Juan Hill, U.S. forces found themselves outmatched. Spanish fire rained down with a speed, volume, and relentless accuracy the American troops simply couldn't answer. The Krag was quickly branded a failure, its adoption a colossal military blunder that cost hundreds of American lives and exposed a gaping flaw in the Army's procurement system. Within a decade, the rifle was retired, its replacement a gun that was, in nearly every functional aspect, a direct copy of its Spanish competitor. The official narrative is simple. The Krag failed. The Mauser won. But the real history is a staggering contradiction. Stripped of the political theater, the Krag-Jørgensen rifle was, mechanically speaking, an absolute marvel. It possessed a legendary bolt action, smooth, fast to cycle, and incredibly reliable. It won the U.S. trials not because of corruption, but on the pure merits of its handling and engineering. So, how does a superior piece of engineering lose a major war so completely? This is the story of a rifle that was built for one type of war, but was forced to fight a war it was never designed to win. The answer lies not in ballistics, but in a forgotten tale of political infighting, institutional inertia, and a single unique feature that was meant to conserve ammunition, but instead guaranteed defeat. To grasp the magnitude of this failure, we must rewind to the U.S. Army's existential crisis of the 1880s. For decades, the service rifle had been the single-shot trapdoor Springfield, a relic of the Civil War, firing a massive low-velocity black powder cartridge. The world was rapidly transitioning to smokeless powder, a revolution that made rifles faster, flatter shooting, and, crucially, concealed the shooter by eliminating the massive white cloud of smoke. America was technologically lagging, and lives depended on finding a replacement. The trials of 1892 were a cutthroat global competition. The U.S. examined dozens of designs, including the Mauser, the Lee, and the Schmidt-Rubin. The Norwegian design, submitted by Ole Herman Johannes Krag and Erik Jørgensen, emerged victorious. It won not just on paper, but through extensive, rigorous testing across thousands of rounds and extreme conditions. The Krag's defining feature was its integral, fixed rotary magazine, loaded through a unique side-loading gate. Unlike the Mauser, which used a vertical box magazine, the Krag's magazine was essentially a chamber built into the side of the stock. A soldier could simply open a hinged door on the receiver and feed 5 rounds into a rotary magazine, one at a time. This was not a speed-loading device. It was a flexible loading device. Proponents of the Krag argued this side gate was its greatest strength. Retention of focus. A soldier could reload slowly, round by round, while keeping their eye on the enemy. They didn't have to cycle the bolt or use a clip, which could potentially expose their position. Ease of topping off. The magazine could be constantly topped off with single rounds whenever a moment of lull occurred, ensuring the rifle was always near its 5-round capacity. Superior cycling. The rotary design allowed the rounds to feed perfectly into the chamber every time, eliminating the common jamming issues of early box magazines. However, the crowning piece of the Krag's design was the magazine cutoff. This was a small, crucial lever. When engaged, it lifted the follower and turned the Krag into a literal single-shot rifle, forcing the soldier to load a cartridge directly into the breech for every shot. In a modern context, this seems insane. Why willingly reduce your firepower? In the military mindset of the late 19th century, it was the definition of professionalism. The officers believed the magazine cutoff was a necessary disciplinary tool. They feared that giving soldiers instantaneous access to 5 rounds would lead to panic fire, the rapid depletion of precious ammunition reserves, and a loss of tactical control. The doctrine was clear: use single rounds for the vast majority of fighting, and only flip the cutoff lever to use the 5-round magazine in the absolute gravest emergency or during a final bayonet charge. The Krag-Jørgensen, therefore, was not designed as a speed demon of the battlefield. It was built as a highly precise, exceptionally well-handled weapon for a conservative, professional, and methodical army. The War of 1898 was the rude awakening. The Spanish forces were armed with the Mauser Model 93 chambered for the deadly 7 by 57 mm cartridge. This rifle was a product of the German school of military efficiency, focused ruthlessly on speed and volume. The Mauser's secret weapon was the stripper clip. A soldier would open the bolt, place the clip of 5 rounds into a slot atop the receiver, use their thumb to strip all 5 rounds into the internal box magazine, and discard the empty clip, all in under 3 seconds. This was a paradigm shift. It meant that in the time, a Krag-armed soldier might carefully insert 2 single rounds via the side gate. The Spanish soldier had reloaded 5 and was ready to fire again. The differences extended beyond mechanism. The Spanish 7mm Mauser round was noted for its flat trajectory and light recoil, while the Krag's single-round side gate was no match for the Mauser's 5-round stripper clip reload, which was 3 to 4 times faster. Crucially, the Mauser was built with 2 opposing locking lugs, making its bolt structurally stronger and capable of handling the high-pressure cartridges that were the future of military ammunition. When the actual fighting began in Cuba, the strategic failure of the Krag was a direct result of the magazine cutoff doctrine. American commanders, true to their outdated military principles, ordered their troops to keep the magazines closed. This meant U.S. troops were fighting a modern rapid-fire enemy, using their rifles as single-shot arms. The volume of Spanish fire was shocking. Spanish positions, often expertly concealed in the thick jungle foliage and employing the new, near-smokeless powder, maintained a continuous wall of bullets. American soldiers attempting to advance, or even just return fire, were consistently pinned down. They could not achieve the suppressive fire needed to maneuver. The Krag, in their hands, was simply too slow. The reports were devastating. General Shafter stated, "The rifle of the enemy is much superior to ours," summarizing the prevailing sentiment that the Krag was an inadequate weapon. The battlefield reality, that volume and speed now mattered more than deliberate conservation, had rendered the Krag's cautious, deliberate design philosophy completely obsolete. The problem was further compounded by logistics. While the Krag was mechanically sound, the supply chain for its unique .3040 Krag ammunition was plagued by corruption and slow distribution, leading to shortages that further compounded the firepower crisis. The soldiers were not just using a slower rifle. They were using a rifle that the Army insisted they use inefficiently, and one that they often lacked the necessary ammunition for. The real reason the Krag failed was not the rifle's design, but the institutional failure to adapt to modern warfare. The U.S. Army's doctrine was the true antagonist. Reports from the front lines were scathing. Major General Nelson A. Miles, commander of the Army, noted that the Spanish were often unseen, their smokeless Mausers giving away no position, yet their fire was devastating. The Krag system was designed for the precise, slow-moving lines of combat of the 1870s, not the frantic fire and maneuver tactics of 1898. The officers' mandated use of the magazine cutoff was a death sentence. By forcing their men to withhold the 5-round capacity, they deliberately degraded their rifle's only chance of keeping pace with the Mauser. The Krag was a 5-shot repeater. The U.S. Army used it as a single-shot rifle with a heavy barrel. The war's most influential participant, Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, then a colonel in the Rough Riders, was one of the Krag's most vocal critics. Having personally carried and fired the Krag carbine in combat, he quickly recognized that the rifle's design, however smooth, was completely inadequate against the speed and efficiency of the Mauser system. Roosevelt's public complaints, combined with the devastating casualty reports, created a political firestorm that the Ordnance Department could not ignore. The final verdict was immediate and brutal. The U.S. military made a pragmatic, if ethically dubious, decision. If you can't beat them, clone them. The Krag was officially doomed. The U.S. Army scrapped the Norwegian design and began development on a new rifle, one that was to be an almost exact copy of the Mauser Model 93, utilizing a 5-round, stripper clip-fed magazine and a much stronger action to handle future, more powerful cartridges. Development of the new service rifle began immediately. The goal was simple: to create a rifle that combined the legendary accuracy of the Krag with the loading speed and structural strength of the Mauser. The result was the Springfield Model of 1903, M1903. The M1903 was a direct repudiation of the Krag's entire philosophy. It featured a Mauser-style magazine, a fixed internal box magazine loaded exclusively via the 5-round stripper clip. The side gate was gone. Mauser bolt. It incorporated the twin, opposing locking lugs that made the Mauser action immensely strong, capable of handling high-pressure cartridges, new ammunition. It was developed alongside a new cartridge, the .30-03, which would soon be refined into the legendary .30-06 Springfield, a round that would define American firepower for half a century. The Krag-Jørgensen was officially retired as a service rifle shortly after the M1903 was adopted. Its career as America's primary infantry weapon was brief, ignominious, and catastrophic. But this act of cloning the Mauser did not go unchallenged. The Mauser Corporation quickly filed suit against the U.S. government, claiming patent infringement on the basic features of the M1903 bolt and magazine. The courts ultimately sided with the Mauser Company, confirming the extent of the borrowing and forcing the United States to pay a significant, though ultimately discounted, royalty settlement to the German arms manufacturer. This legal battle confirmed, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the victor of the Spanish-American War, in a technical sense, was indeed the Mauser. The Krag-Jørgensen story is a profound lesson in the evolution of military technology. It was a beautiful, meticulously engineered rifle, a final testament to the 19th century mindset of marksmanship and ammunition conservation. Its action remains legendary among firearm collectors for its buttery smooth cycle, a feature unmatched by the M1903. But the Krag was designed for a world that ceased to exist the moment smokeless powder was perfected. Its reliance on the side-loading gate and the officer-mandated magazine cutoff were vestiges of an era that believed discipline, not firepower, won the day. The ultimate irony is that the rifle that was better in terms of handling and technical refinement was entirely unsuited for the rapid, suppressive, and brutal warfare of the 20th century. The Krag was the perfect rifle for the wrong time. Its failure, while tragic, provided the essential, bloody catalyst for the U.S. Army to develop the Springfield M1903 and, later, the M1 Garand. The Krag lost the Battle of 1898, but its short, high-profile life forced the military to face reality, paving the way for a succession of rifles that would eventually define American firepower for a century. Its legacy is not as a disaster, but as the essential difficult lesson that allowed the U.S. Army to win the future.